Vusumazulu Multimedia's flagship project is Ma, Book 1 of the Tree of Life trilogy, a graphic novel based on an ancient African creation myth adapted from the iconic African book, Indaba My Children. It was written by Credo Mutwa, the High Witch Doctor of the Zulus, in 1964. He belongs to an ancient chain of knowledge keepers whose duty it is to pass the profound knowledge of the ancestors down to their firstborn son. When his son was murdered, and thus the link in the chain of knowledge had been broken, he was determined not to let this profound ancient wisdom die with him, and so he wrote Indaba My Children. In so doing, he betrayed his lineage and vanished into obscurity. This project started 7 years ago for me when I first read Indaba My Children. It took that long because I had to get the blessing and the permission from the original author, which was very, very important for me. Secondly, it took some time to get the rights for this particular work. And thirdly, I hadn't met Andre yet.
Yeah, I mean, we met at this time last year while they were shooting the Judge Dredd 3D movie. And I was working as a conceptual and storyboard artist, and Mark was working as the fabrication floor manager.
But prior to that, I spent 6 months working on a screenplay for that same company. And thankfully they brought me on board as the floor manager, for which I'm very grateful, because if I hadn't, I would never have met Andre.
And it was pretty much at that point that we'd both become pretty disillusioned with the film industry and realized that something had to be done. I mean, we had to do something drastic if we wanted to further our own careers.
Because you know that's the way it works in this industry. You know, you slave away to make someone else look good. You know, we just kind of got to the point where we just realized that, you know, we've got the skills, we've got the talent. You know, let's just commit all our time and energy into empowering ourselves.
Yeah, and it was while working on that I suggested to Mark that we should collaborate on something. I mean, I had no idea it was going to be this project. I mean, I'd known nothing about his affiliation with Indaba My Children or Credo Mutwa, and this incredible story that he wanted to share, or wanted to tell.
Yeah, like after I saw Andre's portfolio, it was a no-brainer for me, really. You know, although I'd never worked in the comic art medium before, I knew that this was the medium that this story had to be told in. So the same day I gathered a few reference pictures and, you know, gave them to Andre, and at the end of the day, these two main characters were, you know, inked, coloured, perfect, and that was it really.
And it was after that we both just immersed ourselves in the medium. I mean, and we have been so ever since. We've read all the material we could find and studied the works of the masters until we could say that we could talk the talk.
So yeah, we pretty much began this in November 2010. Well, the Tree of Life trilogy is a dark African fantasy which is as old as Africa itself. It was first told many thousand years ago by a wise man, probably around the campfires of our long-forgotten ancestors. It is the story from which all other stories told since find their root. Our graphic novel adaptation has raised this ancient African world back from the dead. It's a kind of Beauty and the Beast meets the Book of Genesis meets Lord of the Rings, all rolled into one epic African tale which predates all of these stories by thousands of years. The story tells the story of how everything as we know it came to be. Well, conventional African history begins, well, the history that we were taught at school, begins when Vasco and his cronies arrived. But the Tree of Life trilogy, it takes you right back past this point, beyond to the beginning of time, to the time before time even. And the more you unpack the story, the more you start to realize that the people that came up with this, they knew some pretty profound stuff, man. Stuff that our scientists, astrologists and anthropologists are only today discovering. Like, for instance, the ancient Africans knew that the moon was once part of the earth, and that billions of years ago, the Earth was hit by a colossal meteorite which sent a moon-sized chunk of Earth into orbit. Only recently has this well-known African truth been confirmed by NASA.
Also, the word Zulu, we are told by anthropologists, means the sky, when in fact it means interplanetary space. The word for sky is sibakabaka. The word Weduzulu means the dark sky that you see every night with stars in it. The Zulu word for traveling at random, like a nomad or gypsy, is Izula. This is all pretty profound stuff when you consider that it's only within the last 60 years that modern man attempted to travel in space, when these wise African men knew that it was possible way back when. Another thing that's baffled anthropologists and scientists is the Olmec civilization in South America, which according to Graham Hancock is roughly 12,000 years old.
I mean, if you look at those Olmec heads, they're clearly of black Africans. You know, there's no way that someone could sculpt such anatomically correct features of a race of people they had never seen or had any contact before. You know, unless these guys had reference material, it's pretty impossible. You know, this then begs the question: how did those black African men get to the Americas to start the Olmec civilization, when conventional African history or conventional global history would have you believe that Africans had never set sail and were never great leaders of men? Now, Africa is not the dark continent we have been made to believe it is. Instead, it is a continent whose people were once incredibly wise and built structures that modern man cannot explain. Most people have not heard of Adam's calendar and the massive ruins that once existed here in South Africa. These ruins are said to be at least 400,000 years old. Again, this was known by the ancient Africans. And Book 2 of our trilogy tells the story of the rise and fall of this highly advanced empire they called Amarira. So, to answer your question, you know, we're presenting a different version of the truth, a truth that predates the truth that has come to shape us.